Greetings, everyone, and happy spooky season. Welcome to Back to Ashes. I am your host, Phoenix. Before we get started, please look upon your screen and wish everybody a very happy October birthday. I hope your birthdays are as beautiful and as happy and special as you are. And I'd like to take a brief moment to brag on a little special someone that everyone seems to love my postings of. Little Miss Stormy turns 3 on Halloween. So please show her some love, and I'll make sure she gets some extra loving from every one of you. She says thank you in advance. And for the ones with heavenly birthdays, my heart goes out to you. May your higher power hold you in comfort during the date that your loved ones were supposed to celebrate their birthdays. And now to acknowledge the elite members of the channel, thank you so much for your love and dedication. I reciprocate that love. With that being said, it is now time to go back to ashes. For once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and happier person every day. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack or tuck in and get warm, and prepare for your dose of vocal melatonin entitled True Creepy Stories. Right after this intro, there will be an ad. I'll read the first story, there will be an ad, and after that, there will be no more ads within this video. In the very rural area where I live, there are quite a few ghost stories, tales, legends, and superstitions. One such ghost story is called the Bingham Light. The story goes that a train conductor fell from the train while waving his lantern to warn someone on the tracks that the train was coming. So he supposedly fell from the train and it cut off his head. And now you can see the light of his lantern at the place where the tracks used to be. It is a well-known story in my area. People would constantly go out to the area in search of the light. It was a popular hangout spot for high school students and adults to go out there, get drunk, and test their courage against the light. The National Guard even went out to the location with night vision goggles to try to solve the mystery of the light, but came up empty. I had heard the story my whole life, but never made it out there until I was an adult. The first time out there was scary, partly from the ghost story, but also because of some of the living beings who showed up on this particular night. The area where the light shows up is at the end of a dirt road next to an open field surrounded by a swamp. We were excited to be there and had some amazing luck because we saw the light floating at the end of the road as soon as we turned onto the dirt road. We slowly drove toward it, and we were maybe 100 yards away, and then it vanished. So we pulled up, got out of the car, and that's when we saw the light was now behind us, back toward the entrance of the road. There were 5 of us in the group. Me, my best friend, his girlfriend, her brother, and the brother's girlfriend. The stories about the light say that if you yell or shoot at the light, it will change colors. The brother started yelling at the light, saying, "I have your head." The rest of us told him to stop. We don't believe that taunting the supernatural is a good idea. He ignored us and kept yelling, and the light actually went from a yellowish light to a deep red. It started moving towards us, but then turned sharply left and disappeared into the swamp. It was a crazy experience, and our adrenaline was pumping because we were all terrified when it changed colors and started coming toward us. We all stood there comparing notes on what we had witnessed. And that's when we saw headlights on the other end of the road as a vehicle approached. We should have just gotten in the car and left, but we didn't. We were having a good time and didn't want it to end. Besides, we figured the new arrivals were just like us and just looking to have a good time and see the light. When they arrived, there were 2 guys in a beat-up pickup truck. They got out and said hi. We returned the greeting. They asked us if we had seen the light. We told them yeah and shared our story. They began to share their experiences, as they were regulars out here. They told us that they were where the old tracks were, in the swamp, just beyond the field. One of them offered to walk us over and show us. We were excited and gladly accepted. It ended up with all of us walking over. One of them was in front of us. The other was in the back. I started to get a very bad feeling. I don't know why. They had done nothing wrong, but something was telling me this was not a good idea. We were about 50 yards from the tree line of the swamp when, all of a sudden, I saw the light to my left out of the corner of my eye. I stopped everyone and said, "There it goes." It vanished as fast as it had appeared. But as I looked in that direction, I noticed the guy who was leading us, who was slightly to my left, had a long knife hiding in his hand, close to his leg. I would have never noticed it in the dark, especially since I was looking straight ahead, intent on our destination. Anyway, a shiver ran down my spine as I tried to figure out what to do. I just knew if we walked into that swamp, something bad was about to happen. I checked my watch and said, "Oh wow, it's later than I thought and my wife is waiting on me." The guys tried to talk us into continuing, as it was really close and wouldn't take long. I just said, "I can't. I really have to get home." I tensed up, waiting for them to do something as we turned, and started walking back to the car. I stayed where I could keep an eye on both of them as we made our way back. We ended up getting in the car and driving off without incident. I told my friends what I had seen, and they freaked out too. They hadn't noticed it. We agreed we owed the light a debt of gratitude. I'm not saying the light was trying to protect us, but I am surely thankful it showed up when it did. I still get a cold chill every time I think about what could have happened. The summer of 1991 in Modesto clung to your skin like a fever dream you couldn't shake. The air was thick with the scent of diesel and regret, the kind that seeped into your pores from years of bad decisions piling up like uncollected trash on the roadside. I was 24 then, old enough to know better but young enough to still feel the pull of the shadows I'd crawled out from. Growing up in the 80s here, in this flat, unforgiving sprawl of cracked asphalt and faded billboards, I'd run with a pack that howled at the moon and bit anything that moved. We were ghosts in ripped denim, chasing highs that tasted like rust and oblivion. Some of my boys ended up in cages, still bars that echoed with their hollow laughs turning to screams. Others? They went into the ground quieter, just shallow holes in the desert where the coyotes whispered their eulogies. But the ones who slipped the noose, the ones who clawed their way back to the light before the darkness swallowed them whole, those were the saints in my book. The ones who taught me that survival wasn't about outrunning the devil. It was about turning your back on him before he got too close. I decided to be one of those saints. Driving had always been my sacrament, the hum of tires on blacktop like a rosary in my hands. So I traded the needle scars for a cab company's badge, ferrying strangers through the veins of the city I both loved and loathed. By 91, I'd been at it nearly 2 years, a nocturnal confessor in a yellow chariot, listening to the sins of the damned spill out in the dim glow of the meter. Most fares were forgettable. Drunken husbands slurring apologies, shift workers nursing hangovers like open wounds. But every so often, the night would cough up a demon in human skin, and you'd feel the chill of something ancient stirring in the back seat. Take Sonny Barger, for instance, that raspy voice imp of a man, founder of the Hells Angels, flagging me down one sticky evening like he owned the asphalt. I asked why he wasn't astride his iron steed, and he fixed me with eyes like polished obsidian through the rear view. 14 beers, 5 shots of tequila, he growled. And I'm too goddamn old to let the badges chain me to a wall tonight. We laughed like old conspirators, his voice scraping the air like gravel under boots, and he tipped like a king scattering alms. Shout out to the angels, by the way, I suppose. Their shadows were long but predictable, the kind you could dodge with a wink and a prayer. But not all shadows play fair. Some slither in on whispers, wrapping around your throat before you can even feel the cold. It was August 2nd, a Friday, the witching hour creeping in at around 8:30 as the sun bled over the horizon, painting the sky in bruises of purple and black. I was cruising down the avenue, the 108 unfurling toward downtown like a serpent's tongue, when the city seemed to hold its breath. Fridays were always a frenzy, booze flowing like blood from a fresh cut, the streets pulsing with a desperate rhythm of souls trying to outrun the weekend's regrets. I was just easing into my turn, the engine's low growl my only companion, when I spotted her. A silhouette etched against the dying light, thumb extended like a plea to the uncaring gods of the highway. Hitchhiking. On a night like this? The air thickened with unspoken warnings. The road here had teeth, hidden in the dark, where the sane didn't linger. Something primal tugged at me, a flicker of pity laced with the old paranoia from my wilder days. I pulled over, the cab's brakes sighing like a reluctant lover, and honked once, sharp as a warning shot. She approached the driver's side with a hesitant gait of a wounded animal, her face half lost in shadow, pale skin glowing faintly under the sodium light like moonlight on a grave. I didn't even get the question out. "Where to, miss?" before her voice cracked the silence, thin and trembling, laced with the salt of recent tears. I don't have any money. I'm sorry, I really need a ride." That voice, it slithered into my ear, shaky as a leaf in a gathering storm, carrying the echo of sobs she'd swallowed whole. My first instinct was to gun the engine, leave her to the mercies of whatever prowled the night. But the ghosts of my own fractures, the boys I'd lost, the fights that left bruises on more than flesh, held me there. "Hop in," I said, my words rougher than I intended. "Free ride. Tonight's on me." Her relief hit me like a gasp from the depths. "Oh my God, really? Thank you. Thank you so much." It bordered on a wail, the kind that promised more tears if I pushed too hard. She slid into the back, the door clicking shut like a coffin lid, suitcase in tow, battered and stained, as if it absorbed the blows meant for her. "Airport," she murmured, and I introduced myself. "Name's Jack, just Jack," before asking hers. No answer at first, just the rustle of fabric as she huddled into the corner, eyes darting to the windows like she expected phantoms to press against the glass. I eased us onto the highway, the city lights smearing into streaks of amber and crimson, and tried the gentle probe. "You okay back there? I mean, I know you're not, but if you need to unload, the night's long." She was a damn cracking. words spilling slow at first, then in a torrent that filled the cab with the rot of a love-gone septic. East Coast girl, transplanted to California's sun-bleached bones for college. Met him in her junior year, a night in faded jeans, all soft words and steady hands. He cradled her through finals fire, then bankrolled her drift after graduation, when the job hunt turned to a slow bleed. "He was perfect," she whispered, her voice a threadbare veil over something sharper. "Kind, patient, like he'd wait forever." But forever has claws. As the months stretched, her resumes vanishing into voids, his patience curdled. Fights bloom like mold in damp walls. 2-3 times a week, voices rising like smoke signals of doom. "The field's cutthroat," she said, fingers twisting in her lap. "I was trying. God, I was trying, but nothing. And he started seeing me as dead weight, a leech." By then, she'd been scraping for waitress gigs, anything to staunch the resentment festering between them. But the blow-up came like a storm long foretold. "Pack your bags," he snarled, hurtling her things like offerings to some petty god of rage. It escalated, words to shoves to something darker, the air thick with the copper tang of violence. She fled with her suitcase, a refugee from her own life, bound for Florida, in the sanctuary of grandparents' arms, or so she said. My own scars itched at her words. Dad's fists on Mom before he vanished into the ether, leaving us to pick up the shards. Rage boiled in me, hot and unbidden. I gripped the wheel tighter, veins thrumming with the urge to U-turn, to storm that house and paint the walls with her ex's apologies. "Jesus, I'm sorry," I muttered. "You hurt? Need a hospital detour?" She waved it off, too quick. "No, he didn't really hurt me." But the lie hung there, a pall over the cab. I pressed soft as I could. "Cops then? We can stop, make the call, get it on record." The shift was instantaneous. A switch flipped in the dark. "No." Not a plea, a command, edged with desperation that clawed at my gut. First warning bell, tolling low and ominous. I pushed, gentle but insistent. "If he laid hands on you, broke your stuff, that's assault. They need to know for next time." Her insistence cracked back. "Just the airport, please. I need to go." That no echoed, too fervent, like a door slamming on secrets too foul to name. Impulse. I told myself the trauma's echo, but doubt wormed in, cold and insistent, coiling around my spine. I probed deeper, masking concern as camaraderie. "You hit back? Self-defense? Cops eat that up. It's justified." She bristled, words tumbling jagged. "They wouldn't see it that way." "Why not?" Silence, then a snap like brittle bone. "Because they won't. Just drive, I'm begging you." The plea dissolved from ice to whimper, a child's terror peeking through the cracks, and it tugged. Damn it, it tugged. I let the quiet stretch, the highways drone a funeral dirge, before murmuring, "Best revenge? Let him rot in a cell overnight." Her mutter slithered back, That's not going to happen. I missed the hook then, too tangled in my own chivalry. You gonna let that trash just walk free? After what She cut me, voice heavy as sodden earth. He's not going to do anything to anyone anymore. The words landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading chill through my bones. Not her fling of beating. No. The violence had turned inward, a blade reversed. And that finality, it wasn't a slap or a shove. It was an end. Permanent. The air in the cab thickened, tasting of ozone and old blood, and I felt the first true prickle of the abyss yawning behind her eyes. Miss, I started, voice scraping dry. If you did something bad, I gotta let you out. Can't make me accessory to whatever this is. Lies? Truth? Didn't matter. The words were my shield. Toss the lamp? Fine. Airport it is. But if it's worse, if he's bleeding out back there. Rustling from the back, fabric whispering like serpents in dry grass. My eyes flicked to the rearview, heart slamming against ribs like a caged beast. She was delving into her jacket, fingers pale spiders, and then click. The unmistakable hum of a hammer falling home. A pistol's promise. I'd heard it before, 3 times in 2 years. Faceless thieves stripping me bare under streetlights in different gaze. But this was intimate. The barrel's shadow blooming in the mirror like a bruise. The girl I'd pitied, the victim with tear-streaked cheeks, had uncoiled into something feral. Her eyes twin voids reflecting nothing but the road's endless night. Words spilled from me, unbidden, calm as a prayer in indifferent stars. Easy, miss. No need for rash hands. Her voice returned, that shaky veil. Airport. Just take me. I don't want to hurt you. Don't make me. I just need out. Questions burned. Did she put a hole in him? Is he writhing in linoleum, life leaking slow as molasses, calling for help that won't come? Part of me, the scarred boy from the bad crowd, almost envied the bastard, his suffering. But the rest? I don't trade in executions. Life's a thread too frayed to snip on whims. And God, the urge to dial for an ambulance, to spare some soul a crawl through his own filth. But questions were luxuries now. In my life, that was the currency I wouldn't spend. So I drove, silent as the grave, terror coiling tight in my chest. This girl, she'd confessed to murder in whispers, and the madness in her eyes whispered she'd paint the cab red if it kept her from those phantom grandparents. Florida? Lies. A smart ghost would vanish to Bogata's alleys, not Grandma's porch swing. The airport loomed like a false beacon, terminals aglow with sterile lies of escape. She stirred as we neared the drop-off. Stop here. I'll walk. I braked in the shadows, away from the throng of travelers, meat shields too distant for her trigger finger. Engine off. Keith. Protest rose reflexive. Can't, miss. This is my lifeline. How do I eat without? Half turn, and that's when she shed the mask. The muzzle jammed into my temple. cold steel kissing skin like a lover's threat, grinding hard enough to bruise bone. Pain bloomed, sharp and electric, and her voice dropped to a hiss from the pit. Give them. One last gasp, a Hail Mary from my fabricated heart. You can't steal a man's soul like this. Kids to feed. What if... Didn't finish. She erupted, a banshee unchained. Shut your mouth, all of you. Men with your chains, your control, thinking you own us body and breath. Not this one. Not anymore. The words dripped venom, laced with a history of fractures I could only glimpse. The boyfriend wasn't the first grave she dug, just the latest. Keys, she repeated. Were your ghost kids? Mourn a father they never had. Resistance crumbled like ash. I surrendered them, fingers numb, watching her slither out, suitcase trailing like a shroud. She melted into the night toward the terminal. That poor me hunch returning, a chameleon skin. I waited, heart hammering hymns to survival, till she vanished, then bolted for the payphones outside, shadows nipping at my heels. Glanced back every step, half expecting the crack of gunfire to stitch the air. Dialed 911, voice a stranger's rasp. Possible shooting, address from her whispers. A man down and dying. Cops swarmed eventually, badges gleaming like false teeth. But she was smoke. First flight to Nassau, or hell's antechamber. Gun ditched in some terminal toilet's abyss. Keys? Still hers, a trophy clutched in madness. I begged to jump from airport's grease monkeys, nursed the cab home on borrowed spark, then nursed the bottle alone, a muzzle's kiss throbbing like a brand. Days blurred into weeks, the company shipping new keys like a reluctant absolution. Life resumed, fares, fumes, the grind. But the night never left. I'd catch glimpses in rear views, pale faces with hollow eyes, thumbs out like summons, whispers in the wind off the 108, carrying her voice. He's not going to do anything anymore. And sometimes in the dead hours, I'd wake slick with sweat, convinced the phone's ring was her, calling from Florida's swamps or wherever the damned wash up, thanking me for the ride, or warning me. Because in Modesto's underbelly, debts like that don't die with the engine. They idle, waiting for the next hitchhiker to flag you down. And deep down in the black, where my own shadows stir, I wonder, was she the monster or just the mirror? The one shadowing me, the beast I'd starved but never slain? The road stretches on, endless and unforgiving, and every turn whispers her name, a secret I'll carry to my own unmarked grave. I don't know how to get rid of it. Please help me. This is my true paranormal testimony. Let me warn you right away. This is extremely long. Ever since I was 10, I've experienced strange paranormal events in my old family house, and during trips, apparitions, objects disappearing, voices, sleep paralysis with terrifying visions, and even seeing auras. I'm 17 now, and it keeps intensifying. I don't know how to handle it anymore, and I'm looking for advice. It all started a few years ago when I was in the 5th grade. I went through some trauma when my grandmother was suffering from depression during her divorce from my grandfather. She was not doing well and was watching a lot of dark, morbid things. During a vacation at her house, when I was alone with her, she forced me to watch paranormal videos with her. Since that day, I still have visions of that footage. I was never able to sleep the same way again. When I got back home, I slept with the light on for over 3 months, and then I started seeing a little boy near my bedroom door, a few meters away from my bed. It was just a dark shadow, but as I often say, I saw and I just knew. I knew he was harmless, so I eventually stopped worrying. For context, I live in a house that is nearly 165 years old, and I am the only one in my family who has kept some of its old furniture, like 2 large wardrobes around my bed, as well as a beautiful mirror with its vanity, though my mother has always refused to hang it up. Needless to say, this house has seen a lot of people come and go. There have even been births in my brother's room and deaths in mine. One day, during the lockdown, I experienced the first real paranormal phenomenon in my house. All of my windows were closed, no draft, my door shut, the AC off, when suddenly a Nerf dart refill placed on a shelf started moving by itself for no reason. The strange part was that it only lifted up from one side and moved left to right, like a compass needle. I managed to film it and showed it to my mother, who didn't believe me. I even moved the object several times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. For several months, nothing happened. Then, within the span of a year, my mother, my brother, and I each lost a personal item under very mysterious circumstances. My mother left her earrings on her nightstand, and they vanished. She searched everywhere, on the floor, under the bed, behind it. Nothing. My brother lost the handwritten manuscript of a novel he was writing, something very precious to him, and it just disappeared. I also lost an object of mine, though I can't remember exactly which one. I should mention that I was a practicing Catholic, though I don't go to Mass as often as I would like. During a Catholic camp, while attending Mass, I saw my guardian angel in the flames of a candle. There wasn't any particular form, but again, I saw and I just knew. I saw the same angel again in the flame of a candle given to me at Christmas a few years ago. I've always been sensitive to the paranormal, even before I really began to believe in it. Something that has only truly happened in recent weeks. The paranormal activity began intensifying about a year ago, maybe a little more. My bedroom door opens systematically when I'm inside, but when anyone else is in the room, it strangely stays shut. When I'm home alone, doors slam on their own, even though there are no drafts. In 2024 and 2025, I lost many personal belongings in the same mysterious way, even though they were always kept in the same place. I eventually found them hidden inside the lining of my brother's old suitcase, unused for years, while I was packing for vacation. The suitcase was on top of a sliding wardrobe in the attic, which has been fully renovated. It's like a second floor, and you need a chair to reach it. Anytime, while watching a movie, 2 heavy sliding doors separating my living room from the upstairs bathroom suddenly opened and closed extremely fast on their own. The strange thing is that the doors are so heavy, I can't even open them by myself. Not long after that Catholic camp, I went on vacation to Guadalupe and had my first sleep paralysis. That night, there were constant power outages, and a phone in the house kept ringing nonstop. I've always had a deep fear of the dark, but I gathered my courage and unplugged the phone. My mother joined me at that exact moment, doing the same thing. I went back to bed and began feeling a heavy oppression before falling asleep. That's when I had an absolutely horrible nightmare. I was trapped in a bed that was being folded shut. I eventually woke up, but that's when the real nightmare began. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed on my back. In front of my bed was a dazzling, glowing white figure surrounded by yellow light. And again, I saw and I just knew. It was a fallen angel. Who exactly? I had no idea. But that night, I came closer to pure terror than I ever had in my life. The angel advanced toward me, moved to my left, and headed for the entrance of my mosquito net. That's when I woke up a second time. For the first time ever, my mother actually believed me. Later, we went on a family retreat to Paher-le-Muniel with the Emmanuel community. We stayed in a shabby, overpriced hotel. The moment I stepped into the room I was to share with my brother, I felt uneasy, really uncomfortable. The first night passed without much, just some noises from the bathroom. But the second night was far worse. In the middle of the night, I felt someone sit on my mattress next to me. Whatever it was so heavy that my body actually tilted toward it. Strangely, I didn't feel anything emotionally at that moment. But when I pulled at my sheets, the weight would disappear and then return again. I know it wasn't my brother because he was sleeping in another bed and there was no one beside me. The next day, I went to see a priest giving a lecture on occultism. I didn't know it at the time, but what he said would awaken a flood of memories. He spoke about demonic possession, its symptoms, and everything he described matched what I had been experiencing. Afterward, I went to talk to him, and he recommended the prayer of the brothers. It proved very effective, especially the Canticle of Zechariah. For the past 3 weeks, I've been reciting the Canticle before bed and praying a lot to Mary as well. During the prayer of the brothers, the woman praying over me asked the Lord to visit me that night, and he did. When I went to close the window, a butterfly came in. But it wasn't a moth. It was bright, white, almost glowing. I tried to put it outside several times, but it kept coming back. Finally, it landed next to my bed, and that night, I slept 2 more hours than usual, 6 hours instead of 4. I began to sleep better in the days after. Up until then, I had been sleeping very badly, terrified every night. When I returned home, I felt a presence in my bed again, but less strong. A few nights later, I saw a transparent sheet gently laying itself over me, like a protective blanket. The following week, we went camping, and at first everything was fine. Then my period started, with much stronger pain than usual, so severe that I had to be carried to my bed. While my parents and brother went to the pool, I stayed to rest, and that's when it started again. I heard footsteps above me, though there was no second floor. This phenomenon only happens in my attic at night, around bedtime. I eventually fell asleep, only to wake up facing the wall, unable to move or scream. I felt the mattress sink behind me again, as though someone was lying down. This sleep paralysis was worse than the first one. I felt nothing but terror, and it was painful. My whole body hurt, especially my legs, arms, and back. Honestly, I think the only reason I didn't lose my sanity was because I didn't see anything this time. The rest of the trip passed normally, but since returning home, phenomena has been everywhere. Objects falling in my room, my door refusing to close when I'm inside, footsteps above me in the attic, and most recently, voices. I hadn't spoken about this until now because it's so recent. But I seem to have developed a kind of gift. It's as if I can read certain people because the voices give me information. All I need is to look at someone to know what they're truly like deep down, behaviorally, and sometimes even what they've lived through. I don't fully know how to explain it. My mother and brother also have this sensitivity, but they don't experience paranormal events, only an ability to sense people. During the retreat, a woman was sharing how she became a consecrated virgin at a Marian evening and saw something around her, a violet orb, like an aura. During the same trip, I began seeing people's auras again, 3 or 4 of them, and these ones were yellow. I think the Virgin Mary was with that woman that night. These phenomena began when I was 10. I'm 17 now, and I'm becoming more and more sensitive. I just know that when I was younger, I must have left a door open and something must have entered, and maybe it wants to take a hold of me. Since the experiences have intensified, I've also developed serious health problems: IBS, PCOS, vitiligo, MIH in my teeth, severe allergies, etc., which have weakened me. So these are my paranormal stories. But the truth is, I don't really know how to handle these situations anymore. Do you have any advice for me? It was late August in Nelson, British Columbia, when my family traveled for a regatta on beautiful Kootenay Lake. My sister Elizabeth, my father, and I drove our beat-up Dodge Dakota through winding mountain roads into town. The air was warm, and a haze from distant wildfires drifted over the hills, carrying the sweet, acrid scent of burning pine. Mountains rose around us like dark guardians, their peaks catching the last light of day. Pines, cedars, maples, oaks, and aspens mixed together, their leaves whispering in shades of green and gold. Sunlight pierced through the canopy of slanted beams, spilling over the highway and guiding us toward the lake. Nelson appeared suddenly, a small city cradled between water and mountains, at once quaint and commanding. Heritage buildings of brick and stone lined the narrow streets like rows of old teeth, their painted signs fading into ghosts of older names. Hanging flower baskets swung gently from wrought iron lampposts. There was charm in the air, yes, but also something else, something watchful, like the town itself was holding something. The Hume Hotel rose above Baker Street, its century-old brick facade glowing in the waning light. It looked like a relic from another era, its windows glinting like dark eyes. We were tired from the drive and eager for dinner, but I remember even then feeling the building's presence, a weight almost imperceptible but pressing. Our room was a standard 2-queen layout. When you entered, the bathroom door sat directly ahead. To the left was the bed my sister and I shared. To the right, my father's. The bathroom created a sort of dividing corridor, with just enough space to feel separate from one another. We unpacked in silence, each of us taking turns in the bathroom. My father was ready first and left to meet our rowing coach. Martin in the lobby. My sister straightened her hair in the bathroom as I sat at the desk, writing a letter to my boyfriend at boot camp, the soft click of the iron punctuating my thoughts. That's when I heard the first knock. It was a polite, deliberate knock. 3 taps, just enough to make me think my father had forgotten his key. I rose, opened the door, and stared into an empty hallway. The corridor stretched both ways, quiet and still, not a single door open or footstep retreating. I frowned, closing the door, and told myself it must have been my sister bumping against something in the bathroom. When she emerged, dressed and ready, I told her I'd be down shortly, and she left with her key. Alone, I finished sealing the envelope when a second knock came. This time, it was louder, insistent. A cold ripple of unease crept down my back. My sister had her key. My father was with Martin. Why knock? And why twice? I pressed my eye to the peephole. Nothing. The hallway was utterly empty. No motion, no sound. I opened the door just a crack, peeking out. Still nothing. My heart thudded as I stepped back into the room. I told myself I was imagining it, grabbed my bag, and hurried down to meet the others. Dinner at Mike's place was warm and grounding. We laughed with Martin over steaming plates, the normalcy of it making me forget the unease upstairs. My father and Martin went to the lounge afterward, leaving my sister and me to return to our room. We slipped into bed, stomachs full and moods light. That's when the faint scratching started from inside the bathroom wall. It was soft at first, like mice. We whispered back and forth, convincing ourselves that's all it was, until we fell into restless sleep. I dreamed all night, but could not awake from it. Murky, oppressive nightmares that evaporated by morning, leaving only a heavy feeling in my chest. My sister, pale and tired, told me she'd heard footsteps pacing outside our door through the night. Our father chuckled when we asked if he'd noticed anything, brushing it off. His CPAP machine drowned out any sound, he said. The next day passed like a reprieve. We spent it at the lake, prepping boats and preparing for races the next day. After prep was finished, a couple of teammates, my family, and I went on an outing to explore the town. Nelson's shop and cafes were bright and inviting, a world away from the hotel's stillness. But that evening, after a team dinner at an Italian restaurant, our unease returned. We opened our hotel room door to a sight that made us stop cold. Every pillow in the room, from our beds, from the chairs, had been arranged in a perfect circle on my father's bed. In the center of the circle stood one lone, cylindrical pillow, balanced upright, as if by some unseen hand. The soft mattress should have made it impossible, but there it was, defying gravity. For a moment, we said nothing, staring. Then my father exhaled sharply and began putting the pillows back, muttering something about housekeeping. We were too tired to argue. That night, I couldn't sleep at all, listening to the faint sounds of footsteps pacing up and down the hallway, never stopping. The next morning, race day, we fled the hotel early. We spent the day at the lake, exhausted but triumphant, staying out until nightfall, celebrating with teammates. Yet, each time we returned to the Hume, my sister and I felt it pressing on us, the sense that something unseen disapproved of our presence, that the walls themselves were leaning closer. On our final morning, after breakfast at the hotel's general store restaurant, Curiosity got the better of us. We asked our server if the hotel was haunted. Her face lit up, not in amusement, but recognition. She told us of renovations stirring up activity, of a maid whose cleaning cart had been thrown across the hallway, of guests whispering about unseen hands leaving scratches where none had been. We were relieved, strangely, to know we weren't alone in our experience. When we left the hotel later that day and drove out of town, Nelson looked as serene as it did when we first arrived. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the Hume Hotel had been watching us the whole time, and that it was not yet finished with its story. Well, I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Henry. I had just finished school in the spring and headed home to northern Maine. The plan was to stay at home through the winter and head west in the springtime. Mom and Dad were over the moon at the idea of me staying. My old room and the familiar smell of breakfast in the morning were comforting. I'd forgotten how much I'd missed home. Over breakfast, I asked my dad if he knew of any potential leads for a summer job, something to keep me busy. He chuckled. Actually, I do. My friend owns a house up in the mountains. Told me he's been struggling to find a housekeeper. Watching over some big place in the hills sounds right up your alley. I really like the sound of that. With my dad's friend's number written down, I finished breakfast and prepared my pitch, though I wouldn't need it, after all. The guy's name was Derek, and he was surprisingly easygoing. He practically offered me the job before I even had a chance to ask. "Oh, author's son. I heard you just got back from school." Yes, sir." "Well, if you haven't found any work for the summer, I need a house sitter really bad. Would you be interested?" Yes, of course." He gave me the address and told me to meet him on Sunday to go over the details. The rest of that week was calm. I helped my mom around the house, went fishing with my dad one afternoon, and caught up with friends Friday night. Everything felt right, grounded, like life had finally slowed down. Sunday came before I knew it, and I headed up the winding mountain road to Derek's address. The pavement eventually turned to gravel, and the air grew thin and cool beneath the canopy of pines. It never ceases to amaze me how thick and alive the forest feels up here. When I arrived, I was almost shocked by the size of the home. The garage alone was as big as my parents' house. One of the bay doors was open, and Derek stepped out to meet me as I pulled in. He was an older man with salt and pepper hair and a dark royal purple jumpsuit trimmed with gold. He extended a firm, cold hand, and I shook it. Then we started talking right there in the driveway. Derek explained that he came up only 2 weekends a month. He showed me around the property, listed my responsibilities, and spoke in a faint, oddly romantic Euro accent I couldn't quite place. I was to look after the property, keep it clean, and make sure it stayed welcoming. When he offered $800 a week, I accepted before he could change his mind. More than pleased with how it went, I rushed home to pack. My mother shared in my excitement. She said it sounded like something out of a movie, getting to live in a mansion all summer. I could tell she was sad I wouldn't be staying home, but I promised she and Dad could visit one weekend. "You guys can crash in one of the 6 guest bedrooms," I joked. Over dinner, my dad told me more about Derek, how he owned a few hospitals, and how incredibly wealthy he was. The next morning, I drove back up to the house, following Derek's handwritten instructions to unlock the gate and enter the security code. I stepped inside and took in the grand entryway. Marble floors, dark wood, sunlight catching on every polished surface. I unpacked my things. If I was going to be there for 2 weeks, I wanted it to feel like home. Wandering the property, I noticed the neighboring house for the first time. It was strange, like I hadn't seen it before, as if my eyes had been fixed on Derek's mansion. The other house was nearly as large, but ancient and crumbling. Windows shattered and missing, with holes in the steep clay-tiled roof. I felt an odd pull toward it, an attraction I couldn't explain. I wanted to see inside. Circling the yard, I caught sight of a car parked behind the house, an old Volkswagen Beetle. Though weathered, it wasn't abandoned. The tires were firm, the grass freshly trimmed beneath it. Someone lived there, or at least someone was there right now. With that realization, I snapped out of whatever trance I'd been in. I must have looked strange standing there staring. I hoped no one had seen me. That night after dinner, I sat at my computer. I'm a bit of a night owl, so I stayed up later than I should have. That's when I saw him. As I passed by one of the tall windows, something caught my eye. The faint orange glow of a cigarette burning in the dark. I froze. Out at the edge of the property, a man stood smoking, perfectly still, facing the house. Fear rose in me, sudden and primal. I felt exposed, lit up like a stage actor behind glass. I couldn't move. The glow of his cigarette was steady, unwavering, and the moonlight caught the pale of his face just enough to make it worse. Then, as suddenly as I noticed him, he turned and walked away. Slow, deliberate, before vanishing into the tree line. I exhaled, embarrassed at how fast my heart was racing. It was late. The neighbor was just having a smoke outside. Nothing strange about that. I turned off a few lights so I could see more clearly into the dark. The neighboring house was pitch black. Then, out of nowhere, headlights from the Volkswagen flickered on, cutting across the yard. The car drifted down the gravel road, smooth as if it were gliding on glass. I didn't sleep well that night. Just before dawn, exhaustion finally took me. In my hazy half-dream, I could almost swear I smelled cigarette smoke. When I woke up this morning, I tried my best to put on a tough face and chalk up the previous night to paranoia. What would my family think if I bolted back home after only one night? It was going to take more than a creepy neighbor to scare me away. That night, I barricaded myself in my second-story room, blinds closed, only dimly lit with the ornate lamp in the corner. I told myself I wouldn't look outside again, no matter what. Around midnight, I noticed a sound, soft, rhythmic, like tapping. I debated whether it was new or if I was only just now noticing it. My heart thudded as I traced the noise to the window. I held my breath and eased my fingers toward the curtains. Through a thin slit in the fabric, I saw it, the faint orange tip of a cigarette floating just beyond the glass. Too close, too steady, an eye level with me on the second story. A bolt of fear shot through me. I stumbled back, hit my head hard against the dresser, dancing on the edge of consciousness for a few moments. When I came to, the tapping was faster, almost frantic, and then suddenly, it stopped. It's been about an hour now. I'm writing all this down because I can smell smoke again. It's stronger this time. The air feels heavy. In the distance, I can almost hear a wet pool of breath, slow and hollow, like lungs that haven't drawn air in centuries. The smell's stronger now, smoke drifting from down the hall, up through the floorboards into my brain. I think I finally understand what Derek meant when he said he needed a house sitter real bad. He didn't need someone to watch the house. He needed bait. And that, dear listeners, brings a close to these true creepy stories. I'd like to take a moment and address the rest of the members of Back to Ashes. Thank you all so much for your continued dedication, for your wonderful comments, and for your wonderful support. As I always like to say, without you, I don't have a voice. Back to Ashes wouldn't exist, and I would just be sitting here talking to myself. So thank you so much. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you're awake, I hope you've enjoyed this collection. Until next time, please stay vigilant and please take care of yourselves. I'll be reading to you soon. Have yourselves a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.